Life challenges your sense of dignity at every turn in a fast-paced American society where quick judgments and snide remarks can feel commonplace. Whether you're 60 years old or comfortably past retirement age, the way others address you can strike at your core. Yet dignity isn't a gift you passively receive, it's an active responsibility you hold. If you let it slip, some people will test your boundaries. This is where Stoicism offers an empowering perspective. Rooted in ancient wisdom, Stoicism teaches that external events, like unkind words, don't dictate who you are. Instead, it's how you interpret and respond that really matters. By maintaining a calm, centered mindset, you can navigate hurtful comments or dismissive attitudes without. In a country that values personal freedom, Stoicism resonates profoundly. It empowers you to distinguish what you can control, your thoughts and reactions, from what you cannot, other people's actions or opinions. After all, in the United States, each person's dignity remains a cornerstone of our core values. When you master your inner life, outside negativity loses its sting. Over the next pages, you'll discover practical methods to guard your dignity in any setting. Remember, nobody can undermine your worth unless you grant them permission. 1. They sense your weakness. Have you ever been in a situation where someone seemed to target you with snide remarks or passive-aggressive comments, almost as if they smelled vulnerability in the air? If so, you're not alone. Many people, especially those over 60, discover that certain individuals test boundaries like predators scouting their prey. They observe your body language, your hesitation to speak up, and even the subtle changes in your tone of voice. Once they sense uncertainty, they close in with words or behaviors that leave you feeling cornered. Why do they do this? Some people, consciously or not, gain a sense of control from seeing someone else doubt their own worth. It's often more about them than it is about you. They might feel insecure in their own lives. Maybe they're grappling with a sense of failure, or they're resentful of others' achievements. Targeting you, especially if you appear hesitant or unsure, offers them a fleeting rush of power. Yet Stoicism reminds us that while we can't always prevent these attempts, we can control our response. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius believed that external provocation isn't the real threat, it's our internal reaction that matters. This doesn't mean you remain silent or passive. On the contrary, you can calmly but firmly communicate that their behavior is unacceptable. Sometimes it's a direct statement, "I don't appreciate that kind of remark." Other times, a confident, steady gaze conveys your resolve without needing many words. In the United States, a nation that values personal liberties, it might feel uncomfortable to hold your ground quietly. After all, many of us were taught to speak up if we want to be heard. But remember, dignity doesn't require loud declarations. It thrives on self-awareness and unwavering self-esteem. When people sense that you know your worth, they quickly realize you won't be an easy target. They might move on to someone else or even reconsider their actions altogether. There's also value in understanding why you might feel vulnerable. For many older Americans, physical or emotional changes can temporarily shake confidence. Perhaps you've just retired and are unsure of your new role in life, or you're adjusting to health challenges that make you feel less independent. Acknowledging these changes doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. Once you recognize these factors, you can address them, whether through support groups, counseling, or simply talking with friends and family about how you feel. The key is not to hide your vulnerabilities, but to own them with grace. Ultimately, predators lose interest when they realize their perceived prey isn't as defenseless as they thought. By channeling Stoic principles, focusing on what you can control, your mindset, rather than on what you can't, others' motives, you reclaim your power. You don't have to confront people aggressively, you just have to believe in yourself enough to signal that you refuse to be diminished. In that moment, you transform from a target into someone to be respected, demonstrating that true strength often lies in calm, quiet confidence. Your self-respect becomes both shield and fortress, warding off those who feed on hesitation and shining as a testament to the dignity you've built over a lifetime. 2. They want control. It's a scene you might recognize, Someone undermines you in a meeting or takes a jab at your expense during a family gathering. Their aim isn't simply to voice an opinion, it's to assert control. Humiliation, after all, can be a potent tool of domination. The person delivering these barbs wants to see you shrink so they can feel bigger by comparison. It's not always a blatant power grab, but the intention is often the same: diminish your confidence to elevate their own sense of self. When people publicly ridicule or belittle you, they're attempting to claim the upper hand in a social hierarchy. By making you appear smaller, unprepared, overly sensitive, or incompetent, they effectively position themselves as stronger. It's a tactic as old as human interaction itself, used in everything from schoolyard bullying to office politics. For older Americans, this can be especially frustrating. After decades of life experience, you'd think this kind of behavior would fade away. Yet some individuals never outgrow their need to feel in control at another's expense. This is where Stoicism again proves valuable. One of the core lessons from ancient Stoic philosophy is that you only have control over your own mind, your thoughts, responses, and moral choices. You can't forcibly stop someone from attempting to humiliate you, but you can decide whether they succeed. As Marcus Aurelius noted, external events, and that includes rude remarks, don't define you, your interpretation of those events does. The question becomes, will you grant these controlling individuals the power to shape how you feel about yourself? The Stoic answer is a resounding no. Sometimes, it's helpful to look beneath the surface of their attempts. People who seek control through humiliation are often wrestling with insecurity. They may feel overlooked in their personal or professional lives, and by tearing someone else down, particularly in front of an audience, they gain a fleeting rush of significance. Recognizing this pattern can make their attacks easier to brush off. It doesn't excuse their behavior, but it clarifies what's really driving their need for control. How, then, do you respond? Rather than matching their aggression with your own, focus on projecting calm conviction. You might say something as simple as, "I'll have to disagree with you on that," spoken in a level tone. Or you can choose a measured silence, allowing their words to hang awkwardly without your engagement. In many cases, refusing to validate the insult leaves the person feeling ill at ease, their need for control unmet. For Americans who value independence, reminding yourself of your own hard-earned strength can be empowering. You've handled life's curveballs, health challenges, financial ups and downs, perhaps raising a family, and come out wiser. This perspective is your shield. Their attempt at control can only succeed if you abandon your sense of self. By trusting your accumulated wisdom and adhering to Stoic discipline, you reclaim authority over your emotions and self-worth. In the end, those who rely on humiliation as a means of control thrive on your reaction. Deny them that satisfaction, and you strip away their power. Standing firm in who you are, grounded in decades of experience, is far more commanding than any verbal sparring. It's this unwavering poise that Stoicism nurtures, proof that real control comes from within, not from manipulating others. 3. They envy you. Envy can be a powerful, if often hidden, motivator behind someone's attempt to humiliate or belittle you. Imagine you've built a fulfilling life, perhaps you raised a caring family, achieved success in your career, or simply found peace in your retirement. When a person spots the qualities or achievements they themselves long for, it can stir uncomfortable emotions. Instead of seeking their own path to growth, they may choose the easier route, tearing you down. This is sometimes called malicious envy, a darker form of jealousy that drives people to undermine others. They want what you have: respect, recognition, a sense of accomplishment, but rather than working for it, they lash out in ways designed to make you feel small. Hurtful comments about your age, snide remarks regarding your lifestyle, or subtle digs at your achievements can all stem from this deep-seated need to project their dissatisfaction elsewhere. From a Stoic perspective, recognizing envy in others can help you navigate these attacks with grace. Seneca reminds us that true wealth lies not in possessions, but in the contentment of the soul. Someone who humiliates you out of envy reveals an inner void, one they have not filled with purpose or self-acceptance. By seeing their cruelty for what it truly is, a reflection of their own unmet desires, you free yourself from internalizing their negativity. Still, the sting can be real. When you've worked hard for what you have, it's disheartening to see others try to diminish it. You might feel the urge to defend yourself, listing your accomplishments or reminding them of the effort behind your success. While there's nothing wrong with clarifying facts, Stoicism teaches us to avoid letting external validation govern our sense of self-worth. Your peace of mind remains intact when you don't hinge it on whether another person acknowledges your value. For older Americans, envy-based attacks can sometimes touch on age-related stereotypes. Perhaps someone criticizes your slower pace, or makes insinuations that your ideas are outdated. In reality, these jabs often arise because they feel threatened by your depth of experience. You carry a lifetime of wisdom, which can be intimidating to someone who hasn't walked as many miles. Recognize this dynamic. They may envy the steady assurance you've earned over the years. Responding effectively doesn't require anger or elaborate defenses. A calm refusal to buy into their narrative can speak volumes. You might acknowledge their comment without taking the bait, offering a polite smile or a simple, "I appreciate your concern," before moving on. This approach subtly communicates that you won't be rattled by attempts to undermine you. It also underscores one of the great lessons of Stoicism: you control your mind, not theirs. In the end, remember that envy comes from lack of self-esteem, lack of inner peace, or lack of direction. Your best counterattack is to continue living your values, cherishing what you've earned or learned, and refusing to let someone else's envy rob you of joy. By maintaining your composure and sense of purpose, you exemplify the very qualities they envy, proving once again that real strength is rooted in inner conviction, not external approval. 4. You haven't set boundaries. Boundaries aren't always something we think about, especially if we were raised in an era when being polite was often valued above speaking up for our own comfort. Yet, without clear boundaries, we unintentionally invite others to push us further and further. Over time, jokes at our expense become normal, small acts of disrespect escalate, and we're left wondering why our dignity feels compromised. For many older Americans, setting boundaries can feel awkward if they've spent decades prioritizing harmony over confrontation. However, a boundary isn't an act of aggression, it's a healthy declaration of self-respect. Think of boundaries as invisible lines that define what you will and will not allow into your personal space, whether that space is physical, emotional, or mental. Maybe a family member consistently makes snide remarks about your health or dismisses your opinions. It may have started off as good-natured teasing, so you let it slide. The trouble is, each time you say nothing, you signal that this behavior is acceptable. Over time, they continue, or even escalate, their remarks, assuming it doesn't bother you. In reality, it stings more each time, until you feel cornered. Stoicism teaches that peace doesn't come from avoiding all conflicts but from dealing with them wisely. Epictetus reminds us that we can't control external circumstances, like another person's offhand comments, but we can control how we respond. Part of that response involves setting and maintaining boundaries. When you calmly draw a line, "I'm not comfortable with that joke," or "I need you to respect my time," you're exercising your personal power. It might be met with surprise or even resentment, but standing firm sends a clear message that you value your self-worth enough to protect it. Boundaries also help clarify relationships. Once you articulate what's acceptable, people either learn to respect it, or they reveal their unwillingness to honor your dignity. While it may be painful to discover that someone prefers to disregard your comfort, it's better to recognize the reality than to live under a false sense of security. Over time, a well-placed boundary acts like a fence around a cherished garden, keeping out what doesn't nurture you. For an older generation used to doing things the nice way, setting boundaries can feel like an invitation to conflict. But conflict isn't inherently negative, it can be a path to greater understanding. By voicing your limits respectfully and calmly, you encourage more honest communication. Loved ones or coworkers who genuinely care about you will adapt, those who don't might drift away. Either outcome leads to a more authentic life, where your dignity isn't perpetually at risk. In the broader American context, where independence and personal rights are highly valued, boundaries resonate with the idea that each individual has the right to self-determination. You're allowed to say no to anything that compromises your well-being, and doing so doesn't make you difficult or unkind. It makes you clear-headed and self-respecting. As the Stoics would advise, don't wait for others to grant you peace, establish your own terms and stick to them. Boundaries, after all, aren't walls to keep the world out, they're guideposts ensuring that relationships thrive on mutual respect rather than silent sacrifice. 5. They need an audience. One of the most disheartening aspects of public humiliation is realizing how much it depends on having an audience. Whether it happens at a neighborhood gathering or in a crowded office break room, people who humiliate others often seek spectators to amplify their power. Their cruel words land more forcefully when onlookers are present, even if those onlookers do nothing but watch. Bullies, in many cases, aren't just targeting an individual, they're performing. They rely on the crowd's laughter or silent discomfort to validate their actions. In American culture, where freedom of expression is highly prized, the line between harmless banter and outright humiliation can become blurred. Sometimes, a cutting remark is brushed off as just a joke, and the bystanders, not wanting to become the next target, remain quiet. Unfortunately, their silence can be interpreted as approval. For those in their 60s and beyond, this dynamic can feel both familiar and disheartening. You've likely seen it in school hallways decades ago or more recently at social events. The tactic remains the same. The person seeking to humiliate chooses a weaker target, often someone they suspect won't fight back, and uses the group environment to bolster their position. Even a few forced chuckles from the audience can embolden them to keep going, turning a single hurtful comment into a public spectacle. Stoic philosophy offers an invaluable shield against this behavior. Marcus Aurelius taught that we cannot always control external circumstances, such as the presence of a jeering crowd, but we can master our inner responses. If you are the target, remembering this principle can help you remain composed. Rather than meeting aggression with aggression, you might choose a calm silence or a measured reply. A clear statement like, "I'm not comfortable with this," can hold more power than joining the back-and-forth insults. It's also worth acknowledging the role bystanders play. If you ever find yourself in the audience, someone who isn't directly involved, your silence may unintentionally support the bully's behavior. Stoicism calls us to act with virtue and courage, suggesting that speaking up for others is part of living ethically. While it can feel risky to intervene, a short statement like "let's keep this respectful" or "that's enough" can sometimes deflate the tension. Of course, the individual orchestrating the humiliation thrives on attention. If you appear unaffected, refusing to laugh, look flustered, or fight back aggressively, much of their thrill evaporates. They bank on your embarrassment to entertain the room. When you refuse to provide it, their show loses its spark. Over time, this approach can discourage similar attacks, as they find no gratification in belittling someone who stands firm in self-respect. Ultimately, those who require an audience to humiliate others reveal more about themselves than about their target. They seek validation through others' reactions, showing insecurity behind the bravado. Recognizing this can help diffuse the emotional sting. After all, if their sense of worth depends on performing for onlookers, they're the ones standing on shaky ground, not you. By maintaining composure and, when possible, encouraging bystanders to do the same, you uphold your dignity and uphold the Stoic principle that genuine strength never requires a spotlight. 6. They sense you don't truly know your own worth. Some individuals can spot hesitancy in a heartbeat, an uncertainty about your own value that you might not even be aware of. If they notice you second-guessing yourself or seeking others' approval a bit too eagerly, they seize the chance to undermine you. This isn't because you lack genuine merits, rather, it's because you haven't fully recognized them in your own mind. People who test these waters aren't always malicious. Yet, when they sense you're unsure of your self-worth, they see a window to impose their opinions or dictate how you should feel. In American culture, we often celebrate self-made individuals, those who appear unshakable in their sense of identity. But the reality is that many older adults, well into their 60s or beyond, still struggle with personal doubts. Perhaps you've retired from a long-standing job and lost the daily affirmation of being useful to your team. Or maybe your children have grown up and moved away, leaving you grappling with your next purpose in life. These transitions can momentarily weaken your self-confidence. And, unfortunately, those looking for an easy target pick up on that vulnerability. This is where Stoicism can be a game-changer. Epictetus famously taught that no one can make you feel inferior without your cooperation. His perspective aligns well with the idea that your internal sense of worth is the one thing entirely under your control. If you're uncertain about your value, take time to reflect on what you've achieved and what you still contribute, whether it's mentoring younger relatives, volunteering in the community, or simply sharing decades of wisdom with friends. When you consciously acknowledge your strengths, you become less susceptible to those who try to manipulate you. Their words or actions lose traction because your identity is built from the inside out, not dependent on external applause. It may feel uncomfortable at first to affirm your own worth, especially if you grew up during an era that prized humility above all else. Yet, quiet self-recognition doesn't equate to arrogance. It's more about honoring the experiences and insights you've earned over a lifetime. You can stand firm without needing to boast, you simply let your history and character speak for themselves. When people attempt to undermine you, they quickly find there's no entry point for their remarks. You're no longer a question mark, awaiting affirmation. You're a definitive statement of self-respect. The beauty of recognizing your own worth is how it subtly changes your interactions. You no longer fish for validation, nor do you apologize for who you are. Others sense that you have solid ground beneath your feet, and those who once exploited your uncertainty often move on. This doesn't mean you'll never feel doubt again, but rather that you have the tools, and the Stoic mindset, to address it before anyone can use it against you. In essence, you become immune to those who prey on shaky self-esteem, reinforcing the timeless wisdom that true strength grows from knowing, deep down, that you are enough exactly as you are. Conclusion. In the end, every attempt at humiliation tells a similar story. Someone sees an opportunity to diminish your dignity for their gain. Yet dignity, as Stoicism reminds us, remains yours to protect. By understanding the reasons others might target you, sensing weakness, craving control, harboring envy, neglecting boundaries, seeking an audience, or exploiting your uncertainty, you arm yourself with insights that can reshape your responses. As an older American, you've likely navigated countless challenges, from personal obstacles to cultural shifts. Those years of experience form a solid foundation. By embracing Stoic principles, you reinforce that foundation, creating a mindset in which outside negativity holds less power. Rather than fighting every insult or retreating in silence, you stand firm in who you are, a person with earned wisdom, worthy of respect. Now, I encourage you to take a moment to reflect. Ask yourself, which boundaries have I hesitated to draw? Where might I be undervaluing my strengths? The act of answering these questions can spark meaningful change. No matter your age, you have the right to reclaim control of your emotional well-being. If you found value in this perspective, consider sharing it with a friend or family member. Together, you can support one another in standing tall against demeaning behaviors. Because when you truly recognize your worth, no insult can shake it, and that's a lesson worth carrying for the rest of your life.